What's going on, Transformers fans, and welcome back to a brand new episode on my channel. As always, I'm Jay, and guys, it is my distinct pleasure to be reviewing the latest Netflix exclusive series, Transformers War for Cybertron Siege. And God, that is a mouthful. This show is fantastic, and before I get into anything specific, I am going to be delving into some spoilers that may ruin the show for you, especially if you're a fan and you haven't seen it yet. Go watch it, come right back, but if you already have, let's dive into Transformers War for Cybertron Siege. So the series itself is actually just 6 episodes, about 22 to 23 minutes apiece, so you can literally binge this entire show as a long-form movie in about 2 to 3 hours, maybe a little less than that. But guys, this thing is awesome. From top to bottom, it is an ode to the G1 generation of Transformers, and guys, I love it. As a fan of the G1 property, and it takes place in the final days of the Cybertronian war between the Decepticons and the Autobots. At this point, Megatron has already become the dictator and ruler of the majority of the planet, and there's a fleeting resistance of fighters, of Autobots, plus there are some other random robots in the battle who are neither side, or they're just trying to survive and make sure that they don't get hurt by either of the two factions. The plot itself I really enjoyed because it does tie a lot of different elements and kind of a little different bits of locales and everything from Cybertron onto the story, because the Autobots actually have to go and journey to find the Allspark to make sure that they can take it off-world and send it through a space bridge. That way, Megatron doesn't use it to essentially reformat the remaining robots and Autobots on the planet to make them become Decepticons, essentially. And actually, there's a lot more violence and darker themes in this show than I expected. I mean, this thing's rated TV-wise 7, but there's dead bodies, there's gore, there's blood, there are literal Autobots on pikes that are dead. And then you've got some coarse language. I mean, maybe one time in the entire series where Wheeljack calls Bumblebee a pain in the ass, but still, guys, this is some more mature stuff than I expected, and it's not quite over the top and cannibalistic like how Autobots fought each other in the Transformers movies, but overall, this is definitely in a wheelhouse where they're making it grow up with the audience of the original Transformers, plus it's giving some cool little added mythos and playing around with some of the original elements as we've come to know and love in different continuities about Cybertron. The way that the show is, it's got the G1 aesthetic, which actually is awesome. And the thing about it is the way it's animated, again, it's that 3D animation, which, you know, over the years I have had a love-hate relationship with. But in this show, they've got it so fluid, and it looks very clean and awesome, and it works well with the blocky aesthetics for the characters. And of course, you have Optimus Prime and Megatron in full effect, and you get a whole slew of other awesome characters, especially on the Autobot side. You know, they have all of their good, you know, cool, awesome, reputable characters, and there are some awesome character arcs. And like I said, you don't have kind of the typical camaraderie of certain characters and everything, and that's where it brings into some of the cool little story elements. Is Bumblebee was not an Autobot at first in this series. He was actually just a hired gun to find Energon for Wheeljack and the Autobots, and then he gets thrust into this kind of feet first, or head first rather. And the thing about it is that Bumblebee becomes a kind of Neo character almost, and then he gains this sight beyond sight. If you're into that sort of 80s reference, you know who I mean. Kudos to you. But he actually has this crazy sight which shows him visions of Alpha Trion and everything as if he's a chosen one, and he actually becomes a great help in finding the Allspark and everything with the Autobots. Now, as far as this goes, like I said, the characters are awesome. I love the few arcs. You actually get an arc with Bumblebee. He becomes an Autobot. He has to kind of go on his own little journey of self-discovery and everything like that. You have Jetfire, who actually defects to the Autobots after seeing how cruel Megatron is becoming. And then in this, you actually get Ratchet, who was once a weapons designer, becoming a healer and kind of a medic, as it were. And as we know him, Ratchet has always kind of been a repair robot and everything. Of course, battling when he needs to, but in this he actually helps to revive a near-death Decepticon, Impactor, who actually becomes an Autobot in essence and everything by sacrificing himself and returning the favor and saving Ratchet towards the end of the series, which I thought was pretty awesome. So definitely a lot of good writing. And speaking of which, Megatron is very sympathetic to a certain degree because it actually brings you into his mindset. And the thing is that if you are ingrained in Transformers G1 lore and everything, Megatron used to be part of the other gladiatorial robots. He was actually nameless for a time, and then he adopted the name Megatron. And then from there, he actually had an uprising and started to fight for freedom for the Decepticons, essentially, because they were low-level, low-class robots that were forced to work in the mines and fight each other to the death, essentially. So he once was oppressed, and now he has become the total opposite, doing the oppression, as a matter of fact, which I really feel like they could have done better to actually stretch it out before. And that brings me to one of my major complaints with the show, that it is actually a little too short. I would have preferred it to have maybe 4 extra episodes, of course budgeting and being whatever it is aside, but I also would have loved to have them focus on the timeline a little bit before the final days of the Cybertronian Wars. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Orion Pax, seeing Megatron come up, rise to power, and then seeing kind of what transpired and what caused Optimus to become Optimus Prime, essentially, because that would have just added to the layers and added to the conflict. But since this is the first part in a trilogy, they may rely on some flashbacks in the other series, or they could always go back and do some prequel stuff if the series proves to be very successful, which fingers crossed it is, especially for Transformers fans like us who really don't have a lot to work with in terms of different series that are coming out lately. The voice acting, even though you don't have your fan favorites, Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, and the lot, these people actually do an awesome job at their roles. Albeit, sometimes there are pauses where it sounds like they're trying to put upon a little bit more of a robotic feel, which doesn't necessarily work in some instances. But overall, very good, very cool set of characters and voice artists doing an awesome job, and doesn't detract from the story at all. So overall, as far as this goes, part 1 of a trilogy, the next parts are coming out. So what is there for the future of the Transformers War for Cybertron series? Honestly, I think the toys and the figures have already ruined that, because the next series, I believe, is going to be called Earthrise, where they're going to be on Earth, and of course they're already starting to adopt their vehicle modes based on earthly vehicles and everything. So I think that this series is going to be going into that G1 territory where they're on Earth and actually fighting battles and trying to fight for Energon and resources and trying to protect the Earth from Decepticons and everything like that. So we'll see how that turns out, but I am super pumped. The only thing that I request is that if they do end up getting Cliffjumper into the series, don't kill him off. So overall, guys, if you haven't seen Transformers War for Cybertron Siege on Netflix, go check it out immediately. As a Transformers fan, I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to see what they do next, and I'm really enjoying what they've shown us so far. But anyway, guys, that's all the time that I have for today, so if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe, and if you are subbed, make sure you hit that bell button, that way you never miss a moment of my content. But until next time, guys, as always, I'm Jay, so take care, and bye.